Hey guys, welcome back. Doing another YouTube video. It has been a little bit of time since my last one. Last video we were talking about possibility of building up that '88 Ford Ranger pickup. I'll give you a quick view of it. It's been sitting outside for about a month now. I was trying to get it away from the shed area here. Problem with being in that carport, I guess, shed area there. I just like to get in it. Sitting out here. Drove it around a couple times since then. It's just been sitting, just mowed the other day, and kind of looks like a mess here because I haven't trimmed anything. So there's a bunch of tall weeds and stuff. Anyway, made some progress on some stuff. Unfortunately, in the process of all that, I actually partially tore my left rotator cuff, and I'm a left-handed person. So unfortunately, stuff kind of came to a stall as far as engine swap and transmission swap goes on the Ranger. However, a few things have progressed. This one kind of turned in a little bit more than I thought it was going to. My dad and I came up with the solution. At least we haven't really tested it, but it's a idea for this engine. We'll call it an all-terrain engine hoist. We mounted it on this old Snapper YT16 riding mower. It's basically using think of like a front receiver hitch, and it has a pin going through it so it can pivot left and right. I'll give you a little closer view of it. Try not to get stung by a bumblebee. That's a regular box store. This actually came from Baumgart's, this hoist, or this engine hoist, and my uncle actually bought it, and it kind of ended up at my dad's place, and he's been using it because my uncle doesn't have any concrete, kind of like me. Well, the reason I have it is because, well, I need to put this engine in this pickup at some point, and my dad doesn't hardly ever use this other than he'll use it to jack up a mower so he can clean out a deck or change blades or, that sort of thing. Anyway, we went through a couple design issues. Originally, on the front of this cherry picker, if, I can show you here. And sorry, there's a lot of weeds growing up around here because, it rained a lot recently. Anyway, here's the design that we came up with finally. Let me remove a few weeds here. Basically, it's like a solid rubber wheel here. It's not a caster wheel. Originally had casters on it. They're rubber pneumatic ones. During testing, driving it around the yard, one of the caster wheels pitched sideways really hard, and it actually bent the wheel. And they're supposed to support up to 300 pounds. When we were driving around the yard, we had it was a log splitter with it was like a car axle underneath it. It was a homemade thing my dad had built years ago, and it probably weighs about as much as a V8 engine block. Well, we're trying to simulate what it would do if you're driving around the yard. While driving around the yard, it got stuck in a rut, and it just bent the wheel. So, straighten it, tried to do it again, and it did the exact same thing, only worse this time. So, Dad and we went back to the drawing board and said, what can we do differently? And then I was thinking, why don't we make it so the front of it pivots so it can actually kind of twist? Because that was the problem. It got way off kilter, and it's putting all the weight on one of the legs of the cherry picker, and that's what bent the wheel. I think if it was allowed to flex just a little bit, because right now it just sits on the front too, like the legs, like this is basically your cherry picker legs, like my fingers here, and the wheels are, where my fingernails are. That's where the wheels sit. So it's all like this, and the rest of the weight is on the front two tires on the mower. That mower has like a cast style front end, so it's a little heavy. It's pretty heavy duty. I think I can easily lift up a V8. I don't think that'll be an issue. And don't power steering, so that's a little iffy. We'll see. Just have to kind of use some common sense when you're driving it around. Anyway, really haven't had a chance to test it out on the engine yet. We'll get to that here in a second. I'll show you what I got going with that engine. Unfortunately, in the process of building this engine, like I said, tore my rotator cuff partially. So things have been slow. I can't lift, they said I can't lift more than 30 pounds. So I've been taking it kind of easy with things. Well, unfortunately, my wonderful little shed here had other plans. I used to have a loft up in, when I walked into there, a storage loft, and was in here when I moved. This shed, I did not put the shed up. This was here. This is a rental property. For those of you that are not familiar or just watching this video. And yes, my fleet of lawnmowers. Anyway, this here on the ground that was hastily thrown outside was the loft. It fell down. and it missed the engine sitting on the engine stand by about 4 feet. Uh, Very glad I walked into this. This was my view walking into the shed, which you see this nice open space up here now. There used to be a loft cover. It went about, probably about 4 or 5 feet into the shed. Well, I can show you even. Where this Romex wiring is running, that's where the loft used to sit up, where that 2x4 is sitting, and then same on this other side here. The loft was sitting up here. I walked into here, and it was leaning on top of this tarp. The loft was about to here. And this fridge kind of stopped it on the other side from falling completely down. Because I just opened up the door. It was like a Sunday evening, about 6:30. I walked in here because I was going to do some stuff on this engine, which like I said I'll show you here in a little bit. And I was like, oh no, my crap. So shoulder being injured at the time, and it was still hurting fairly good at that point. You know, now it doesn't hurt like it used to. I was like, dang it, I gotta get this out of here, so I'm ripping the thing out. And prior to that, which you might have saw when I walked in, I put this. It's a 500 BTU air conditioner. I put it in here. It attempts to cool it down in this shed when I was like, 90, 80, 85, 90 degrees in here, because it gets super hot in the shed. It is not insulated, as you can probably see. And yeah, it's kind of a joke. You might as well just have a fan with a water bottle blowing on the back of it. I'm glad I didn't spend that much on this thing. It's a brand new unit. It's a Hayer. I think that's how you pronounce it. Found it on eBay. It's brand new. And I was like, shoot, 5,000 BTU. That should be able to get this little shed, cooled down. It's like I want to say it's probably about like a 16 by 10, something like that. And then it's like a barn style roof up in here. When I first moved into this house here, this rental house, there was a loft on the front as well as on the back. So this space wasn't all that usable. It was just for storage. Well, of course, I made it into, and yes, there's a peak right there, into this mess now, which kind of can't turn into chaos because of, typical engine building. Boxes end up on the floor, parts end up over here, things end up over there. It's just, and then I built these shelves, which were not in here originally. Those are made out of pallets. Anyway, y'all, since we're to that point, I'm going to show you the engine. This is my, it's not exactly show quality, but it's pretty nice for a budget build. So this is the 302 that came out of my 95 F-150. It is a roller cam engine, or roller lifter engine, I guess, for sure. That much I know because I saw it does have roller lifters. I put this engine together myself. The engine block came back from the machine shop. He said it was fine. Unfortunately, he didn't want to mess with the heads, so I ended up getting different heads off for it. They came out of a 93 F250, which had a 351 or 5.8 liter in it. Also a roller cam or roller lifter engine. The only difference between those two motors, and I know some of you are thinking, well, 351, 302, that's not the same. The heads interchange. The difference is the intake. The intake is different due to the deck height. The deck height is different from 302s to 351s. I don't know the exact specifications, but the 351s are taller, the 302s are shorter. So if you want to use, you cannot put a 351 intake onto a 302 block assembly because it's a different height. Anyway, I ended up getting a 302 289 intake manifold, which 289s and 302s are interchangeable. They use a lot of the same things. This is a wonderful eBay build, and it's cheap. So if you see some not so great stuff on here, that's what I could afford. So here's what we're dealing with. These are stock 86 Ford F-150 valve covers that I got off of the donor motor that ended up in my 95 F-150. I had my boss, who's a body guy, or one of my bosses, I should say, is a body guy. Shout out to Don, to Verdi's One Stop. He's a good painter. He's the one that also painted that Ranger pickup for me. I did the red stenciling here, so yes, it isn't exactly great, but I was trying to freehand it, and it's very hard to do it. I was using a paint pen, and I'm not an airbrush artist. So it turned out about as good as I could expect them to. Anyway, this is a gloss black with hardener in it, so it should be much better than Rattle Can, which is, I originally was going to paint these Mexican chrome, you know, the rattle can chrome. I sprayed and painted them. They look terrible. Uh, Took them to work. Talked to my boss about it, and he said, "Oh, you should definitely sandblast those because the paint was peeling off really bad. It just really looked really rough, and plus there was a bunch of on the inside. That motor that these came off of was just nasty inside. It had all this carbon buildup and just this crud on the inside of the valve covers. There's still a little tiny bit in these, but it's a fraction of what it was. I mean, it was like chunks. I mean, just big old chunks. I was scraping it out of there with the screwdriver. It was so bad. Anyway, he painted those for me, or I sandblasted them myself, and that's a messy job. Never sandblasted anything before. Let's just say I had to go home and take a shower. It was disgusting. Like, I took a bath in the sink before I left work. It was that bad. Anyway, we got those valve covers painted. They turned out beautifully. They're very nice looking. They're just, like I said, gloss black. And why gloss black? The truck is green and black. I figured ties in, and also why red, because there was a lot of, I couldn't find, I wanted to do green, would have been cool, but I could not find green accessories. Like, I couldn't get like a green air cleaner like this, or a green distributor cap, or, you know, things of that nature. They just didn't have it available, at least not for everything. There was like a couple things. I'm like, oh, that'd be cool, and then I couldn't find it for anything else. So decided to go not do that. So we went with red, because actually the engine that's in the Ranger now, that has a red valve cover on it, and I figure, it's fitting, it's red, it'll match. And then the air cleaner has like a louvered air cleaner on it. It's an aluminum, like, custom made air cleaner, and has like these louvered fins, and they painted the low spots red, and it looks nice. Anyway, that's kind of a paying tribute. I got this air cleaner. Like I said, a lot of this is all off-brand stuff. It's not name brand things. The most name brand thing on this is this Holley carburetor, which is used. It is not a new carburetor. It's a used carburetor. This HEI style distributor, which was the bane of my existence because Ford never used HEIs. They have their Duraspark setup, which this engine would have originally had on it. If you guys familiar with Ford engines, you know Durasparks were questionable, especially in the earlier years. The later ones were a lot better. The 80s ones and 90s ones were, early 90s ones, I should say, were very finicky. They had a lot of problems, especially when they had the, well, I'd show you, they had that module that was on the bottom of the distributor. They burned out constantly. It was just a real big problem that they had. And actually, the crazy thing is that Ranger that I have, since that motor was kind of pieced together from a couple different engines, that's an old distributor. That is prior to having that module. It is still a Duraspark, but it's an early one before they used that module. So that's like the best one you can get, and I completely lucked out when I got that one. It was just happened to get the best one I could get. If it would have been a little bit newer, it would have had that module. They were known for, they get hot, they burn up. They just had problems. And the funny thing is that Duraspark box on that Ranger is the original one from 1983 that I pulled out of that 83 Ranger that I had in high school. My dad never touched it. It still says Ford Duraspark on it. So for those of you who want to argue the Durasparks are complete garbage, you're right in probably most cases, but that one apparently wants to prove you wrong. Because, yeah, I've never touched it. It's been in a different truck, and it's still gone. It's still going, and I used to daily drive that 83 Ranger all the way through high school, pretty much up until the engine went, and then we did a few rebuilds and stuff on that engine, but it was always the same one. Anyway, going back to this engine. Engine has, it was a 30,000 board engine when I got it. It was a rebuilt engine, remanufactured engine. Unfortunately, through the remanufacturing process, there were some questionable quality issues, and like I said, I don't know when the engine was put in. We thought there was a build tag on it, which maybe I can show you guys. Sorry, this is kind of an impromptu. I just thought, let's make a video, and this is a small space I'm working out of, so yeah, you can see get you in on that build tag right there. If I can even read it to you. 6/14/2019. That's when that engine was ran through the shop, or the rebuilt place that it was at. And yeah, I was pulling that motor out in 2021, February 2021, I believe, because it's 2024 now. I think it's something like that, because I bought this truck in 2021 or 2022. I'm trying to remember. I've had the truck for at least 2.5 years. Trying to do the math on that. I'm not really good at math. So whatever. Regardless of all that, engine's getting rebuilt. You hear the mice squeaking in the walls. So that's the wonderful place about living in an old farmyard. Mice are everywhere. Hate dealing with them. They get into my stuff. That's why I like to move things around. I don't like to leave them sit for too long because mice like to build nests and destroy things. Anyway, back to the engine. Surprisingly, they've left this one alone. Like I said, it's a 30,000 board engine. It's basically stock internals. Didn't do anything to it other than the 30,000 pistons, which were in it when I got it. For camshafts, to my knowledge, is stock. I don't think anything's been done to it. Like I said, it was in a pickup, so I doubt anything was done to it. Things that I did to it, the water pump is out of an 88 F-150. That came out of my dad's parts truck. I was going to use this alternator off the 88 F-150 as well, but I found out, at least from some quick measurements, I might be wrong, but the Ranger alternator is pretty much a direct swap. You can put that right on there, which is nice because the wiring is different. I shouldn't have to do any modifications, and I can take this alternator off and use the one that's on the Ranger. Yes, it's probably not as high amp alternator, but I think it's just a simpler swap. I still got to figure out how to wire up the HEI because I've never really messed with HEI stuff before. It shouldn't be too complicated. I think it's just you got to have an ignition source and then a ground, which that shouldn't be too complicated. I think it's just a switched on power, and then you have ground, and then a tack signal, which I do have a tack in my truck, so I would like to run a tack wire. And then, of course, the vacuum line going to the carburetor. Some stuff I did have to get custom with because I'm not running power steering and I'm not running air conditioning, which this engine configuration would have had originally. I had to get a short belt, and I'm running serpentine. So there's the belt set up like that. This water pump pulley rather, that is special. I had to get it from Summit Racing, and I had to actually machine the diameter down because it's a little bit too big and was actually hitting on the crank pulley. So that was slightly frustrating. I had to take it, which I don't have machine tools here, so I was taking it on the little cheapo grinder wheel up there in the corner. If you can see that from up here. My little cheapo, and I can even see where I'm pointing at, right there. That little cheapo, little tiny grinder wheel. And I was trying to grind it down the best I could. It's an aluminum pulley, so it took a little bit. I was able to grind it down enough so it doesn't rub. Fingers crossed it does work. It's the right grooves, and it took me a couple attempts. I finally got the right belt for it. So yeah, I keep acquiring more belts, which I don't want, but I keep getting them. Anyway, it's got a 600 CFM Holley 4-barrel carburetor on it. It's a generic off-brand intake. I still have to figure out, due to this massive HEI distributor that's on here, unfortunately I had to plug this guy, and then I also had to plug this guy too, because there's two water jacket ports on there, if you couldn't see very well. The distributor's in the way, because when you want to adjust the distributor, it will hit things. The original setup, which it's not around here anymore. It used to have this big tall tower manifold thing that had all the water ports going to it. One went to the heater cord, another one went to a sensor, another one went to another sensor. Well, that won't fit in there, so because of that, the way the distributor is. So unfortunately, I had to use the back ports. Well, in order to do so, I had to get this custom fitting from like a 70s Ford pickup, which were really hard to find. I had a hard time finding them, and this is my next debacle. Unfortunately, this is an autometer adapter. It's like a standoff. Well, they listed as a 3/8 MPT fitting. Well, it's 3/8 MPT on one side, but I don't know what the other side is because it doesn't screw into my 3/8 MPT T. It's a mouthful, which I need to screw both my temp sensor, and then I'm going to have electric fan sensor running off of it as well, so I have to have two sensors. One will be for the gauge, the other one will be for the fan. The other thing I have to run, since it's going into a Ranger and there's not room, steering box interferes, or even the frame rail interferes with the oil filter housing or oil filter location. You have to run a adapter, which these two hoses, I looped them right now, because I was cranking it over, trying to build, or not cranking over, but rather spinning the distributor shaft, down inside of the oil pump, the pressurized oil system, make sure everything was working. We had oiled all the rockers coming up through the push rods, which it did eventually did. It took a little bit of time. And then I also remembered Ford reverse rotation. I was spinning it the wrong way forever, going, what is going on? And I'm like, oh shoot, Ford's counterclockwise. So brain clicked, and yeah, we got it to go on there. Well, anyway, this engine's been sitting in here for quite a while. I'm getting a little annoyed that it's been in there for so long. The problem with problem with projects for me, I have to jump on them, otherwise I lose the ambition. And right now I'm kind of in that wavering spot because, well, unfortunately for me, the car show that I normally take that Ranger to is coming up at the end of August, and I am nowhere near ready to pull an engine on that truck and put this one in there because that truck still will run and drive with the 4-cylinder. Now, I guess I could take that Ranger to the car show one more time this year as it is, which might end up being the case. And this guy's just going to have to wait until August, September, October build, which might be more reality because it won't be as hot, and I don't have to worry about mowing grass all the time. That's been my biggest thing. Every weekend I want to work on this engine, I gotta mow. And then after I'm done mowing, I'm just so shot. I don't want to do anything, and it's just. And then I have to work some Saturdays. There's a million excuses, but when it all comes down to it, I just want to have a good solid day and a half just to work on this thing, and my mind's got to be in the right place for it, especially with my shoulder being like it is currently. I'm not really supposed to be doing this sort of stuff, so that's why it's still sitting in here. But it is eye candy for me because I've never owned a cool looking V8 motor like this, which I know some would say, well, that's not that cool. You got stock valve covers on it, but there are no factory black stock valve covers on a 302 that I'm aware of because they were normally blue or gray. These were gray originally since they were in a 80s pickup engine, which is basically what's in my F-150 currently. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of a slight update on that build process. I kind of been looking at things, getting some ideas. It's been kind of a struggle, just trying to do some stuff, some other things, I did. Oh, it's probably the hottest day of the year. I'm in here working on these fan socket lights. Since that loft fell down, I gained access to a big open space here, and it used to always be like a dead spot as far as heat went, and I decided to put up another one of these socket fans, and this is a different brand. This isn't the Bell & Howell one. This is I forget what brand it is. I got it off of Walmart. I got it from Walmart, which I did get. That's where I got these socket fans too, which one I don't have running right now. It's weird. With the socket fans, for some reason, when you turn on the light, this one always wants to turn on. But for some reason, that one doesn't want to turn on. But yet the light turns on, even though I can have them on already prior to shutting them off, and then I'll turn them back on. That one doesn't turn on. So I don't quite understand what's going on there. Kind of weird. But this one always turns on. This is the newest one. This one's a bigger fan. I don't know if you can tell from just the diameter there. That's actually quite bigger, and actually spins the opposite direction. But I don't know. I don't think it moves as much air, which I know that might be shocking, but this one feels like it actually moves more air than this one does, and it might have something to do with the fan pitch too. I was hoping by putting all three of these fans in there with that air conditioner I had that it would help, but it doesn't really seem to do anything. So, well, like I said, a little disappointed. I had to cut a hole in the door on this shed that I don't even technically own, which I don't know. The landlord doesn't really seem to care about this place. Like I said, I've been running into some issues with him, unfortunately. Not trying to bash anybody, but you know how landlords tend to be. Anyway, currently I have a big hole at the end of my driveway that got washed out due to all the rain, and of course the garbage trucks and delivery trucks and stuff have been coming in here, dropping off parts, picking up garbage, stuff like that. They tend to be a little hard on driveways. Well, my driveway is quite overgrown with grass, and crushed rock hasn't been maintained or anything like that. Well, the end of my driveway gets pretty abused, and there's actually a pretty decent sized hole out there, which it's probably about 8 inches deep, so you wouldn't want to drive like my Challenger, where you'd probably rip the bumper off if you drove into it. Anyway, yeah, told the landlord about it, and he didn't really care to hear that. So he kind of just brushed it off and told me to don't put your trash can in your yard anymore, put it out by the road, and then the garbage truck won't do that. Which, yes, he's right, but it doesn't fix the problem. The problem's still there. It doesn't just disappear because you move the trash can. So it's just like, yeah, kind of at the point. That's where this kind of whole thing, I'm tying in, thinking about future things, thinking about maybe buying a house. And as the name of the channel goes, low budget. Um, that's kind of a questionable thing there. And for this car is actually for sale. I got it for sale right now on Facebook Marketplace. Asking $20,000 for it as of right now, 2024. This is July of 2024. That I'm making this video. Yeah, it's got just shy of 45,000 miles on it. 6-speed manual, 5.7 Hemi. Got an aftermarket shaker hood. That's a Cervantes hood. And I'm looking to sell it. No, it's not perfect. It has a few dings in it and some chips in the paint, but it's a very nice car for what it is. Interior is very nice. Typical wear and tear like you do on any of these cars of this vintage. 2013, like I said, it's not brand new. It's an RT, not an RT Plus, so no sunroof. It has it's like a dark gray and a light gray interior. It fits the car. Wheels are stock. Engine is stock. Exhaust is stock. Basically the only thing that's been really modified is the shaker part for the hood. That sits on top of the engine. That's been changed. It's not a factory hood anymore. I do technically have the factory hood, but it's been hailed on, and that's why it got taken off to begin with. It's an aluminum hood, and the hood that's on there now is actually fiberglass.